freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the globe. Stand upon the right side of history.
General Homer, you've got to get us out of here now! I won't let you down. I won't let you down, son.
Revolution.
And good morning and welcome to Thursday Coffee Rants with Dan. I am the spiritual anarchist, Dan Arnold. I am on the radio here on Revolution.Radio Studio A every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. Today is March 20th in the year of all of us, 2025, on this Soul Garden prison planet. And I am trying to help pluck one head at a time out of people's rear ends. Special shout out to Angus and Sebastian's producers of Love Illusion on Love Illusion Mountain. And that was a promise I made to them that I would continue to attempt to do, and it's a promise I intend to not break, as much as I don't feel like doing this show half the time. Let me take a sip of my coffee. And I say that because you sometimes start to wonder, hey, am I making a difference? What is this even for? I'm certainly not doing something like this for my own ego. I'm not getting paid for it. At this point, it's not even cathartic. And the reason I say it's not cathartic is I have a lot of intellectually stimulating friends to talk to and people that I can vent to who are into the metaphysical, into the occult, and understand the difference between a conspiracy and a theory. And then there's these regular, normal, everyday life things that come up that we still have to deal with while everything else is going on in the world and while everything is going nuts. Just know that if you're not one of the people with your blinders on, if you're a non-voter who can think critically, and you don't have your blinders on, you don't just regurgitate what you hear on the mainstream news media, which is directed by our government to tell you what it's supposed to tell you, in this two-party dialectic that's meant to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, then give yourself a pat on the back. You somehow broke free of the matrix to a degree. You know, when I look at certain things in the government, such as what I would call the unlawful theft of the fruits of your labor, okay, taxes, the left and the right will argue with one another, okay? The left wants more taxes from the rich and gets the right people really angry. But then the right are cheering for tariffs. So basically what I can see is, at the end of the day, the American consumer is being financially raped, and the government just has two factions of the government that use two different words to do the same thing, and that is take your money. If you actually study it just a little bit under the surface than what it is. A tariff is a tax against the person or the company or the entity that is getting the import. They then up their price, and that price increase falls on the consumer. I mean, it's the same thing. So today I'm going to be talking about theories and conspiracies. Today is my first show during what is known as the dark occult season of sacrifice. So I'm going to be talking about that also. Before I go on, let me just give a special thanks to Revolution.radio, the #1 listener-supported platform in the world. If you have a little extra, please give a little extra. It's what keeps us radio show hosts, over 70 of us on here. What I would like to say is just spitting the truth at you. We are actually laying stuff down that the mainstream news media won't tell you. Most of us think critically, and that we could really use it. So if you go to donation tabs, freedom slips, it'd be greatly appreciated. It helps out. Any little bit you can give. And I know it's not easy right now. So, man, what should I talk about first? All these different things going on. Well, let's see. On March 18th of this past week, one day before the dark occult season of sacrifice actually starts, on the 19th, they released the Kennedy assassination files. And I was talking with a friend about it last night, and this is something that a whole show could be, dedicated to, and should be. I'm not going to try to cover it in depth, of course, on a 55-minute broadcast that I do. But we went to the JFK assassination records, which is in the National Archives, archives.gov /research, and just going down here, released on March 18th, 2025. And as I get down through here and I look at all the records, all the different documents and PDFs, I'm on page 1 of 219 pages of documents related to the Kennedy assassination. So some people are fascinated by this. They're fascinated by it. That they really like to talk about all aspects of it. And what I would dare say is the Kennedy assassination, to sum it up, just a quick sum up, is a symptom of a sick society. It's a symptom on the plane of effects from an immoral, sick society where, on the plane of causation, humanity has not adhered to the natural laws of the universe to not initiate harm or steal from others. The Kennedy assassination was what dark occultists would, I've heard it termed, to kill a king ritual. It happened in November, so it wasn't during the dark occult season of sacrifice. I haven't looked at although November 22nd, I do believe, has a Illuminati significance. I looked at a bunch of different things. I don't have it right here in front of me. But it's important to understand that the dark occult season of sacrifice starts on the 19th. And one of the, in my opinion, best most thorough occult researchers. Keep in mind, the word occult only means hidden. It has to do with the eye, oculus, right? It means hidden, and it's information about the nature of our reality that is kept hidden because of all of us understood that what we think, how we think, can manifest our reality and work it to our benefit. They don't want us to know that. This is what they do when they cast spells. This is why words are spelled. It's spelling, it's casting spells. This is why it's important to speak things out loud. You're putting it out into the universe when you speak it out loud, and you give it power with your voice. Which is why if you've got a voice and want to start speaking out against the stuff that's going on in the world, you most certainly should do so. But I think the best occult researcher that we have in the world today is, one of the best anyway, is a man by the name of Mark Passio. He is definitely the number one teacher of natural law. And I have nothing to do with this man. He's helped me greatly. I mention him every once in a while. And go to his website, whatonearthishappening.com. And we are in the end times. We are in the end game. And he's got a lot of podcasts that you should start at podcast number 1 and listen to all of them. However, he's got presentations, I think, that are important. Streetwise Spirituality. That's a 3-hour presentation. Or I believe, 6-hour. It's a 2-part. There's an 8-hour presentation on natural law. The Unholy Feminine and the gender war that they've created is another really good presentation to look at. Cosmic Abandonment, which gets into the psychological mindset makeup and phenomenon of order followers, of why people go into the military, but especially police. And Cosmic Abandonment was one of those ones that really kept me from going back to the job, actually. And for those just tuning into me, because I know I may have some new listeners, and just to know a little bit about me, I spent 2 years in the United States Marine Corps. I got out, I worked in a closed maximum security prison for 5 years, one of the worst prisons in the country, actually. And then in and around the Cleveland area, I was a cop for over 20 years at various places. If I was to sit here and go into every type of uniform I've worn or special duty I've done, it would take a long time. But I've had a lot of people say to me, how can you, because I do consider myself to be an anarchist, and they say to me, how can you be an anarchist after doing all that government work? And I say to them, well, you just answered your own question. I became an anarchist because I was in the Marines, I worked for the government, civilian government, I was a cop. This is why I became an anarchist, because I seen what I was serving. So there is a philosophical thing behind, anarchism, and it's the philosophy that goes along with, higher consciousness, spirituality, which adheres to natural law, that is worth talking about real quick. First off, anarchy does not mean chaos. And the word "an" it comes from the Greek prefix. The etymology of words is important. They like to play with words. This is why they hyphenate the words conspiracy with theory. So as soon as you hear the word conspiracy, you automatically in your mind say theory. We've all got this in us. To this day, as an adult, when someone says, what was it from G.I. Joe? Knowing is half the battle, right? There's this other thing that we say. So they do this with words. So when you hear the word anarchy, you think chaos. And the Greek prefix "an" means without, and archon, which means ruler. So all anarchy really means is without a ruler. And there's something I'm going to read here that I think is significant as far as anarchism is concerned. Because anarchists aren't violent. Anarchists aren't flipping over cars. In fact, I had to hyphenate the word spiritual with anarchist so that way people would realize, oh, he's one of those different types of anarchists. He doesn't burn police cars and flip them over during election seasons like in 2020. Yeah, because anarchists don't vote. That doesn't mean we're not aware of what's going on in the world. It's just most of us have critical thought processes where we can see the game of the left and the right for what it is and picking the lesser of two evils when all they're doing is a game to keep us divided is still evil. So we just don't want nothing to do with it. We normally live our lives in peace. We believe in the non-aggression principle, not to ever aggress upon somebody else, but we also believe in the self-defense principle. And for me, that goes into the defense of others. I have never watched or stood by and let the harm of another person go unchecked without some type of action to stop it or without some type of speaking out or some type of action to speak out. On the last couple of shows, I just got done talking not too long ago about the 7 deadly sins and how they were meant to be warnings against excess at the best. At the most, what they are control mechanisms used by the state, used by governments, used to shame you in some kind of way. Okay, lust. Oh my God, don't be lustful. That's a sin. Well, how do we propagate the species? So, again, I've said this before. Any consensual sexual act between consenting adults is not immoral. Okay, what is immoral is the genocide of an entire race of people. What is immoral is lying and murder, the things that are currently going on in the world. Okay, 5 years ago, every government in the world worked in tandem with one another to lock us all down and put diapers on our faces. If that doesn't tell the American voter that something's going on in this world right now, and they can't put together the puzzle pieces, people like me are just going to keep speaking out. If one person, something I say in 8 or 9 shows, helps just one person on the other side of the world understand something, then all 8 or 9 shows are worth it, which is why I haven't stopped. This doesn't have to be cathartic. It's just one of the things that I'm here to do. But I'm going to read this real quick. What statists, the voters of all types, fail to understand is that anarchists don't believe what they do from a utilitarian perspective, although they realize that free people will do better in the world than ruled people. Anarchy is not adopted for a better society or any other such collectivist notion. The belief in freedom is philosophical. It is held by men with a certain knowledge that they have a right to live their own lives, to pursue their own happiness, and that no other man or groups of men has any moral right to rule them or impede their individual liberty. So, so when you hear people say it won't work, it's entirely irrelevant. Again, it won't work. That's irrelevant. There are answers to your irrational fears about who will build the roads, about police and safety, armies, and all this stuff, but they are entirely besides the point. While anarchists understand that voluntary societies will always outperform ones where your options are limited by the arbitrary use of force, that is not why they believe what they do. Anarchists are not anarchists because it is the only are anarchists because it is the only fully moral and non-contradictory position a man can hold about himself and other men, other people, women, everybody. So the real answer to who will build the roads is, what does that have to do with my right to be free? Anarchy will never be adopted in this large manner as long as you're kept in this thought prison that someone else has the responsibility to protect you, that somebody else has the right of some type of authority over you. You're giving up your own power. You're giving up your own responsibility. And we have a responsibility to protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, regardless of the consequences sometimes. And it's not easy. Sometimes doing the right thing is not easy. You will put yourself in harm's way doing so at times. So let me move on here a little bit. Yeah, as usual, I didn't really prepare at all for today's show. I made a few notes. But I mentioned earlier about Mr. Mark Passio, who is one of the best occult researchers. I seen something that he had posted on Facebook yesterday, and yesterday was the 19th. And I'm going to just read it verbatim from Mark's own Facebook page, because I think it's that important. Probably a lot of people, a lot of listeners are familiar with his work, but maybe not. There probably are a lot of radio hosts here who are familiar with his work or have at least heard of him, but who knows? So I'm going to read it anyways, because I believe that understanding natural law, understanding that that morals are objective, and that things in the universe can be known, and that knowing these things is the ultimate solution to humanity's problem. I really believe in it. So this is what he wrote, and it's just something real quick. Today's March 19th, marks the beginning of the Dark Occult Season of Sacrifice. It opens with a 3-day prelude from March 19th to March 21st, which the 21st is tomorrow. Then the official 40-day period of the Season of Sacrifice begins on March 22nd, ending on May 1st, which is Beltane, the midpoint of spring. During this time period, dark occultists will perform death rituals and rituals involving human sacrifice. Watch for large-scale false flag events during this time. It particularly happens like clockwork almost every year. Now, I said this on a radio show, maybe several radio shows ago, but we need to think as the spring. What is springtime? Springtime is rebirth. It's often a celebration of rebirth. It's life coming back. So the reason why this time of year becomes that dark occult season is because the entities that feed on negative illusion, energy and terror and fear and shame that I really, really believe exist, and those that worship them gain power from your fear. And during a time frame, and this is my opinion based on research, during a time of the year where we're celebrating life and the rebirth and the renewal of everything, this is why they do it, to combat that. Societies like the Skull and Bones Society. I remember back in 2004 when John Kerry and George Bush were both being questioned on their various political beliefs. I like to call them Republicrats and Demopublicans. They both were asked about Skull and Bones, and they both answered the exact same way. We don't talk about Skull and Bones. And they smiled. If a child's done something wrong and you catch them and you ask them a question, watch what their reactions are. There's a high percentage of them that will smile because they know they're caught. They know it's something wrong. Skull and Bones, and I don't like to get real biblical here, but they have the skull and the bones with a big 322 on it. okay, which stands for March 22nd. In the Bible, Genesis 3:22 states, "Now that man has become like us," which is a plural, "he must not be allowed to reach forth his hand and take fruit from the tree of life and tree of knowledge." I'm paraphrasing it. I'm not reading it exactly. I'm not one of these people who feel like I gained some kind of special authority from the moot memorization of a book filled with a lot of contradictions to keep people confused. I'm not saying there isn't good allegory in it. I'm not against anyone in any religion that has a good spiritual practice within that religion. I don't care if you believe that God is, that invisible bearded man in the desert sky. Doesn't matter to me. That's not the real God, in my opinion. Real God is you can't actually give a one gender to divinity when Hermetic principles state both gender qualities are in all things. The universe was mental, so everything was thought into existence, which was why our thoughts is what creates our reality. Creative force in the universe, God's thoughts created this reality, created this universe. That's just another theory. But why would any gods not want us to have fruit from the tree of knowledge? The only time they want to keep you unknowledgeable is when they want to keep you enslaved, because knowledge makes a man unfit, to be a slave. Now, there are certain events that I'm going to talk about on here that have taken place during this time of the year that are important, because moving forward between now and especially tomorrow and May 1st, we have to actually get to May 2nd. There's going to be a lot of false flags. There's going to be things that are going to give governments an excuse who are ruled by dark occultists. This is what people don't seem to understand. This world is ruled by a priest class of dark occultists. And everything is ceremonial. You take part in these ceremonies daily without even knowing it sometimes. I'll run through the list real quick since I'm talking about it now. I'm kind of going out of the order I wanted to go in today. But let's see here. The assassination of Martin Luther King, Memphis, Tennessee, April 4th, 1968. Okay, there was a IRA car bombing in Belfast, Ireland on March 19th, 1972. The Waco massacre was in Texas on April 19th. Yes, I call it the Waco massacre. I believe we were lied to about that. I believe that was a group of people who didn't want to pay taxes. They wanted to have their own compound and be left alone. Create their own food, create their own water, create their own resources. They lived together, lived off each other, and the government didn't like that. Again, do I know for sure? Do I have proof? No. But that's my real feeling, knowing what I know now. Okay, the Oklahoma City bombing, April 19th. Heaven's Gate cult suicides, Santa Fe, California, March 26th. West Side Middle School massacre, Arkansas, March 24th. The Columbine shooting, April 20th. Now, the Columbine shooting is an interesting thing. That was a real school shooting, because the way they brought the kids out, the way it was reported on, the police response to it, unlike some of the responses to some of the shootings we've had over the last couple of years where you see no students at all, those are even faker and easier to contrive, in my opinion. That's not to say that they don't exist. I talked about schools and indoctrination that our students are being a part of, where they're made into complete passive-aggressive automatons who try to get rises out of each other so someone else will be the person who's wrong. Because in a school, if you get into a fight, both people get suspended. What they're doing in this case is they're saying it doesn't matter who started the fight, it matters that you were involved in it. Well, you take a kid who's being bullied on for long enough, and he finally fights back, and every time he gets bullied on, he gets suspended, he fights back and gets suspended. Sooner or later, kids like that, they'll snap. Some of these school shootings are legit because of the school indoctrination system itself teaching all this passive aggression. When I was growing up, if you got into a fight, they wanted to know who started it. Who started the fight? Whoever started the fight was the one who would get suspended. Sometimes, if you won the fight and beat the kid up a little bit too much, you get in-school suspension or something. But many times, you were just defending yourself. There was witnesses. They'd leave you alone. I'm not like advocating for violence in the least bit. I'm totally nonviolent. It's advocating that I think schools right now are teaching a passive-aggressive society, and the entire millennial generation has unfortunately been mind-controlled up through that education system. Not that mine was all that great, but when I was, in the 70s, early 80s in Cleveland public schools, they were actually teaching us how to garden and grow things in a garden in Cleveland. Go figure. Then we had the Iraq War, shock and awe bombings in Baghdad, Iraq, March 19th, 2003. There was the Red Lake Senior High School shooting, March 21st, 2005. The Virginia Tech massacre, April 19th. There was a big shooting in Birmingham Immigration Center, shootings in New York, April 3rd, 2009. There was the Moscow metro bombings in Russia, March 28th, 2010. The big Gulf oil spill in April 20th, 2010. Invasion of Libya, March 19th. Oakland, California shooting at a university, April 2nd. Boston Marathon bombing, April 15th. Fort Hood shooting, April 2nd. Brussels bombing in Brussels, Belgium, March 22nd. Okay, attacks on London, UK, Westheimer, UK, March 22nd, 2017. Boulder, Colorado, supermarket mass shooting, March 22nd, 2021. The concert hall shooting in Moscow, March 22nd of last year, 2024. So these things just, it's not saying that other violent things don't occur throughout the year, but it's at this time of year they seem to want to really counter the life that spring really represents, the returning of life. This is an involuted force that seeks our enslavement. And what we got going on now with this one world government they want to have is what they're shooting for. The new world government, one world government. People call it the New World Order. It's the New World Disorder. So like I'd be for an actual New World Order because the one we got now is trash. It sucks. But a New World Order, one in which people were encouraged to have critical thought, to think for themselves. One in which we were allowed to develop more use of more of our brain. We only use about 5 to 10% of our brain right now. They poison us with all these different things in our food, chemtrails in the air, different chemicals, electromagnetic frequencies we're being hit with constantly. It suppresses consciousness. Now, I've said this before. I'm a social drinker. I'll drink once in a while. But, what I noticed during the lockdowns around here is food has gone through the roof, the prices of food. Alcohol stayed relatively consistent in price. Anything that's going to suppress consciousness, So a new world order, one in which we eventually would develop telepathy and be able to communicate with one another, is something they don't want, which is why they want to put chips on our brains so our thoughts have to go through a cloud and they can mind control us even better. This is an actual conspiracy. This isn't a theory. It is a conspiracy. It's what they're doing. We are in a population call and population control agenda. I dare say we've always been in one. We have to ask ourselves, why throughout all of human history have we always been like a dog chasing its tail? And we end up in these catastrophic, life-ending events, extinction level events over and over again. Is it because we don't adhere to true morality under natural law, under karmic law? So we end up here over and over again? Because we've been at this level of advanced technology, if not even more so in the past. I'd say more so if we go back to Atlantis, which is going to bring me to one of my conspiracy theories. I'm going to get into a theory really quick now. Well, first let me talk about this. The Knights Templar. Okay. The reason I bring them up is because the Knights Templar were a band of knights. They were the first world bankers, but they were a band of knights who were tasked with the mission from the Vatican, from Rome, from the Pope of the Catholic Church, the most powerful entity on the globe at that time, and it is still one of the most powerful, with guarding pilgrims to Palestine, Jerusalem. Their mission was to protect Christians. And they followed that mission, and in many cases, gleefully murdered during war in the following of that mission. So they weren't all good. But their main mission that the original 9 understood, the original 9 Templars, and it was carried on through the few centuries that they existed. Their real mission was to search out and find lost technologies from Atlantis that, if had been found by any government ruling monarch of that time, could have been used to destroy the world, could have been used to take over the world murderously and violently. Their real mission was that. This is what they were looking for when they talk about the Holy Grail. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, there's at least 6 of them that they had reportedly found. They claim there's could be 10, and some people have said there's more than 100. They were huge batteries that power things in the pyramids. We had free electricity and power back then, something they don't want us to have now, which is why Nikola Tesla was all his stuff was raided, and he died a pauper. The gifts he was going to give humanity, and the gifts he indeed did give humanity. If he would have been allowed to do that, nobody would have been everybody would be like, who is Thomas Edison? Nobody would have known about him. They wanted us to have to pay for this, pay for the power we have. We have to ask why. See, the question why should be attached to everything. And it's a why that's supposed to invoke thought, not just talk at people. It's why is this the case? In 1307, the Templars had outlived their usefulness to many of the governments, and King Henry IV, along with Pope Clement V, authorized the arrest of all the Templars. And they pulled it off all at one time. However, someone got word to the Templars, and many of them escaped with their prized possessions and archaeological finds, because their ship was gone, their boat was gone, and many of these Templars that were captured were burnt at the stake, forced to confess to crimes that they didn't commit. One of the things that King Henry IV accused the Templars of was spitting on the crucifix and performing other occult and dark occult, according to what they said, ceremonies. So a few years back, something came to me, and research kind of confirmed this, but a few years back I had said, why are Christians been fooled after Jesus, a prophet, peace be to him, was murdered on this device called a crucifix? It's an uneven cross. Now, the cross that the Templars wear is an equal-sided cross, 4 sides, 4 directions, and it has 8 points. 8 is a spiritually significant number. Also, the Anunnaki from Mesopotamia had the same symbol on theirs. But when we talk about a crucifix, we're talking about an uneven cross that was used to torture and murder countless people, including, quote unquote, the Christian Savior. So I had this question in my mind: why would I want to venerate an object used to murder and torture people? So when you're putting your faith and belief into this thing that was used to murder and torture, we have to wonder why we still have in the macrocosm of this world so much murder and torture going on. They wanted to call the Philistines back then worshippers of idols and soothsayers. And sooth rhymes with truth. Soothsaying usually means truth saying. And the idols they worshipped were, in many cases, crystals and healing things. The Phoenician Bedouins were a roving band of gypsy, basically what would be modern-day Palestinians, who had advanced healing modalities. And actually, the real Hebrew Jews back then had the Jewish Essenes that had the same MO. We've been lied to, is what's gone on. We've been lied to. So many of these Knights Templars and the leaders actually understood the Gnostic teachings. They actually researched occult teachings. And the occult is just a tool. It's just a body of knowledge. And knowledge can be used for good or can be used for bad. That's why I usually always will say dark occult as opposed to, just the occult, because the occult itself is no different than anything. It's neutral. It's a body of information. So they understood this body of information. If they were indeed spitting on the cross, it's because the cross was a mechanism, a tool used to murder and torture people. But the Satanists of that time, and I'm not talking about people who worship the Christian little, guy with a pitchfork and the horns, red in color. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the dark priest class that runs this world. Those are the Satanists. And at the very top level, I still believe they're not human driven. Humans are too lazy. And this is why we've got disclosure coming out. Getting back to the whole Kennedy thing, I read a book called Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper. I highly recommend reading this book. It was written in 1990 by William Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse. In the book, he has a YouTube link that the last time I checked was still working, and it tells you to look at the 29-second mark. You look at the 29-second mark. Once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. The driver of that vehicle, with the president in the back, turned very quickly with a chrome-plated .45 and shot Kennedy right there his head snaps backwards. Everyone was talking about there had to be two shooters. If you look, you don't even have to look closely. Once you know exactly when to look, you'll never unsee it. And people in the comments, oh, poor Jackie, blah 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 blah. I'm like, they didn't even see what just happened. And it was interesting how they had it planned out, because like maybe 0.5 of a second, a half of a second just before the driver shot him, the passenger seat Secret Service agent just looks to the back to his right, kind of gets even Jackie and President Kennedy's attention to look off in that direction. And at the same time, as they're looking back that way, that's when the driver really quickly, with his left hand, went over his right shoulder, did the shot, and came back very quickly. So in still pictures, you see Kennedy with his brains half blown out, and everyone's looking back in that direction. Geniusly done. I highly recommend reading that book, Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper. He was a naval intelligence officer, and everything he said in that book matches 1984, and it matches what's happening today exactly. When I was finishing that book up in like July of 2020, I had to actually look at the date in chapter 6, because what they talked about had already happened in March. I'm like, did they just write this book? So this has been known. What's going on right now has been known for a while. Just to get back to the Kennedy thing. But in 1314, the last two remaining Templars, Jacques de Molay, and the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and Geoffrey de Charny, another high-ranking Templar, were burned at the stake, and their public execution was intended to be a stark warning to others. And again, look at the date it happened. It was on March 18th, just before the dark occult season of sacrifice. While they were burning to death, they recanted their confessions, and the Grand Master put a curse on. He cursed King Louis IV and Pope Clemens V that he would see them within a year, because they would be dead as well, and they died of natural causes mysteriously. So I don't know what they knew, but there's more to our reality, more to history than what we realize, and what we're living through right now is most certainly many planned out things. Now, something I wanted to talk about in the microcosm of my own life, which again leaks into the macrocosm of the world, is violence. I wrote a book called Violence and Ego. I wrote another book called Rise from Darkness. And the third book kind of is going to be putting both those things together as incidents have played out in my personal life. And some of these incidents occur because of resentments that others may sometimes have for you. See, resentment comes from lazy people. Many times what I've noticed is when you help somebody, they really needed the help, and later on down the road, for whatever reason, in their mind, their ego works in this funny way. If they don't have true, anyone who's ever helped me, I've had really true gratitude for, and I've just always been like that. But sometimes people aren't like that. Sometimes they look at you as somebody who, in their mind, you are above them because you were in a position to help them, and they were in this weaker position of needing help. I think this is an ego-driven bullshit. But what I'll see from these people, sometimes they will develop a resentment towards the person who helped them. This is one of the reasons why when I help somebody, I do it from a space of true care, and I do it in a manner which will empower them and actually show them their strength and power, not remind them of their weakness in any way at that time, which is why I'm so honest about my own shortcomings and how I have been a train wreck at times. What I have in my life is somebody who looked up to me and wanted to kind of be like me, but without doing the work it took for me to be me, I guess you can say. And this is a person who only would go halfway. This is a person that wants the cheat codes to video games. This is a person who just is not willing to put in the work that they need to put in. And then when they can't be like you, because they haven't put in the work in whatever it is that they admire about you, to be honest with you, they will start to resent you because of that. They will start to want to see you fall. They will want to put you down. And these are things that we have to be aware of, even from the people the most closest to us. Because if we don't check that resentment and see it right away, this person could hurt you, and they're not going to be very close to you anymore. So whenever I say I admire somebody, that admiration makes me want to put in the work, not to be them, but to be more like them. I admired Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris as a kid. I can't be them, but I sure practice a lot to try to be as much like them as possible. I admired Muhammad Ali's jab. I don't resent these people. I'm actually thankful for what they've done. I'm thankful for their work. I give them credit. And it's the same thing with people in the freedom community, who I would dare say many of whom right now, or at least some of whom, are modern day prophets. And like prophets in the past, what happens to these prophets? They're ostracized, often murdered, or marginalized. And modern day prophets, and I'm the least of them, who are speaking the truth of what's going on, we're in the bottom of the feeds. We are having posts just completely deplatformed, or we're deplatformed. I was deplatformed on YouTube and on a Facebook page where I had over 3,000 followers in 2020. I've been deplatformed. So they do all this, and this is how they marginalize modern day prophets. All prophets are doing, and all they've ever done, Muhammad, Jesus, peace be to them, and many others, they were telling the truth to a people in a way that they can get to understand the truth. And it's what people today are trying to do. It's what David Icke's been doing. Yes, I admire him. It's what Mark Passio's been doing. I admire him. It's what Michael Tsarian's doing. You know, it's what Jordan Maxwell was doing. God rest his soul. He died in 2022. I didn't like how downtrodden he got the last year of his life. Like, there's no hope. I think there's beings out there that are there to help us, and that there is hope. That's the only thing I disagreed with him on, because they can influence things, but humans still have to take these actions. So the modern day prophets are being done in a different way. Just like when they do something, you have to look at the deeper meaning. When they say they're going to hide all police misconduct, that creates an outcry by people. Okay? And it should. But I think it is an electronic modern day Night of the Long Knives, because it's going to be meant to replace these police with robots that will do as programmed, or that will do bad stuff, and they can be like, hey, it wasn't our fault. We didn't program it to do that. They want plausible deniability. Or hire in new ones, like what happened in Nazi Germany. Night of the Long Knives is when all their modern police were murdered, the chiefs, and new ones were implemented that would carry out the orders, which was the SS, that would carry out the orders of what Nazi Germany wanted. So I have one last theory I'll leave you guys with before I get into anything else. And that theory is this. We may have people currently in political positions that are functioning within a system the best they can, like the Templars did. All right, don't be quick for judgment. Nothing but peace and love. See you guys next week. Stay safe.